Hello, everybody. Uh, Today, we're going to be talking about the Canadian economy, the job market, how the economy is going to shape up in the coming quarters. Predominantly talking about Canada, because a lot of my friends requested me to make a video on the Canadian economy and few questions regarding if we're going to be having a recession this year or what's going to be happening to the job market. So today we're gonna be talking about all these topics because I had a day off. I got off from work slightly earlier, so I had time. So I thought I'll answer those. I'll try to answer those questions. So to understand what's happening right now in the economy, you do need to keep in mind few things which you might not be aware of. Since 2009, Canada's per capita income has been stagnant. The per capita income of Canada reached 47, 48,000 sort of levels back in 2009, and it's been almost 15 years that it's been a flat line. The GDP has expanded, but because new people, especially from immigration, were added into the country, the size of the pie has grown up, but the size of the pie for each individual has remained same. So in real terms and even in nominal terms, the per capita income has been stagnant for 15 years. But the asset prices have gone up on an average, predominantly the housing, by about 200%. In some parts like Toronto and Vancouver, they have gone up by like 300%, but if you even it out throughout the country, it has been up by almost like it has doubled. But your wages, your per capita income has stayed stagnant at around 50,000 thereabouts. So that creates a mismatch. And the reason why Canada went gung ho in bringing new immigration post 2012 2013 period was that the policymakers and the powers to be and the politicians came to know that there is absolutely no way that they can raise the level of per capita income based on the prevailing conditions because the commodity market, the oil market, which were the majority exports of Canada, started catering down after 2011. Even the agriculture commodities hit a peak in 2011. And a lot of my friends who are from India might be familiar that since 2011 and 12, agriculture is not giving good return to the farmers even back in India or in Southeast Asian countries. And that's the reason because in the international market, wheat prices, rice prices, soybean prices, corn prices peaked in August 2011. So Canada, whose economy was totally dependent on oil, natural resources, minerals, agriculture exports, had a huge issue. But you do need to increase the size of the GDP every year in order to keep the momentum in your economy going. Otherwise, your banking system, your financial system, your housing market, your economy will start to deteriorate. Similarly, like how it happened in Spain and Italy in those countries. And the solution that was found by the Canadian policymakers was that you bring in new people. Obviously, Canada being a multicultural country, good rule of law, a lot of foreign immigrants were willing to, leave their countries and come to Canada in hope of a better future, like all of us came. Uh, but now the issue is that that game that started in 2012 and 13 is now reaching its peak level because of the rising immigration that has come in the past 10 years. That has brought a lot of resentment among the local people. um, they are seeing immigrants as a source of competition and a threat to their culture as well, which is understandable. It's just it's natural human reaction to anybody that you would consider as an outsider. So now the housing market has run up so much in especially the big cities like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver that the local people and even the immigrants who who have come in the past 7 to 10 years or are coming right now, they can barely afford it with the kind of income levels that you make here by doing a full-time job or even having one full-time and one part-time job. You barely come to an income level where you can afford to buy a house for your family. And so you need that marginal buyer coming all the time in order to keep those property prices higher, because it's a myth. There are two myths related to property prices that people have in their minds. First, that property prices are going up because the income levels are going up. People used to work at $6, $7 back in 2010, and now they're working at, let's say, $15 or $20. So that's the reason your income levels have gone up, and that's why the house prices have gone up. This is actually not true, because as I told you at the start of the video, the per capita income of a Canadian has been stagnant for the past 15 years. And I'll give you one more example. Per capita income of Norway is 70% higher than an average Canadian. But the average house price in Canada is 45% expensive than what it is in Norway. Doesn't make any sense, is it? Second thing, um, what happened was the immigration that was brought in the past 10 years was predominantly the Chinese people and the Japanese people and the Korean people who would bring capital from their countries and bring the new capital to be a marginal buyer of these properties, these assets, and would keep the game going, keep raising the house prices, because that was one of the main reason why everything was done to prop up the housing market. So the economy would revolve around a rising asset, an asset whose price would be rising. And in our case, in Canada's case, it was chosen as the housing market back in 2011, 2012. But now the immigration from these three countries, China, Japan, and Korea, is now going down considerably. In China, because a lot of people are finding it hard to take their capital out because of the closed capital account by the Chinese Communist Party. Third, there is a resentment against China in the Western society, which we all see has picked up pace in the past 5 years. And then Japanese investors have stopped buying assets into the Toronto and Vancouver real estate in the past 3 years, especially in the past 2 years, because of what their policymakers are doing back in Japan. Korea is also the same story, similar sort of a story to Japan. So the only immigration source that is now left to Canada is from the developing and third world countries like India, Bangladesh, Nepal, some Eastern European countries, and some South American countries like Brazil, Peru, Mexico. The issue with those immigrants is that they don't bring with them large sums of capital like how a Japanese or a Korean or a Chinese would bring. So now they are totally dependent on the banking system, the locally produced capital, saved up capital to buy these assets. And that is creating fragility in the banking system of Canada. Because if an immigrant comes from, let's say, India or Bangladesh or Brazil with nothing, save some money, go to a bank, put the down payment, get a mortgage of $1 million, and buys a house, you it creates a fragility in the system, because those numbers work at a lower interest rate when the trend is always down, which has been happening since September 1982, that the interest rate over a 2 year period would always be lower than what you had in the previous 2 year. But it wouldn't work if you are entering into a secular upturn in the interest rates. If we are, because that's a debatable question, that are we entering into a regime where the interest rates are going to be now going upward, not in a complete straight line, but like in a over a long period of time, the trend is going to be on the rise. So in that scenario, this game doesn't work. This game doesn't work. To prop up the houses, you can't bring immigrants who are dependent on the locally sourced saving and credit to buy those houses. It just doesn't work. It's very tricky to explain because the banking system, most of the people just don't understand how the banking system works, even though they have degrees in economics and finance and whatsoever. But it just doesn't work. Just simplify it. To simplify it, it just doesn't work. And the third issue that people are facing is it's creating other social issues because of the high house prices and land prices. People are delaying their marriages because at the age of 25, 26, 27, people feel that they have underachieved, that they have not achieved as much that they would have liked to, and they do not want to enter into a marital relationship being an underachiever, because everybody thinks that, especially for the male population, that it's a sense of their it's a matter of their ego and personal self-respect that they want to accomplish something before entering into a marital relationship. And similarly for the young girls as well, that our young girls are also educated and ambitious, and they want to have a career before getting married to a guy. But there is a sense of underachievement. They are making money by working a full-time job or a part-time job or whatever. You can pay your rent, you can eat well, you can wear some nice clothes and take some selfies on a beach, but you're not achieving anything. You're not being able to buy a house, you're not being able to secure your life financially. 92% of students, international students who came after 2015 and became permanent residents, or they are on their work permits or whatever, 92% of them have less than $5,000 in their checking account. It's a shocking number. It's a shocking number. How are they gonna buy a house? How are they gonna collect the down payment to put down $100,000, $200,000 against these astronomical high house prices to in order to qualify to get a mortgage from a bank? And will they get $1 million mortgage at these rates if the rates are gonna be now rising in a secular trend for the next 10, 15 years? So how do you reconcile all these facts? So either way, maybe we need to cut down the immigration. Maybe we need to cut down the prices of the houses. The house prices needs to come down, or the wages needs to go up, or both needs to meet each other at a point where there is an equilibrium in the system. And is it going to happen? It's a debatable question. But that's the scenario. And regarding the job market and the performance of the economy in the coming few quarters, I do expect a recession to hit the economy, probably around the end of this year. I've been wrong, to be really honest, in the past 6 months, because I thought that we gonna be in a recession in March and April. Last year, my prediction was that we're gonna be in a recession by the second quarter, start of the second quarter, like April, May sort of a time. But I think it has been delayed for a variety of reasons that happen, which are very hard to explain to people. But I think the scenario which is now being laid out by our powers to be is that I think they are pointing that the numbers are pointing, the data and the policies are pointing that we might enter into a recession by the end of this year, like a November, December kind of a period, early winter, or it might get delayed to the start of the 2024. So I'm not 100% on that, but what I'm very certain about is that we are gonna be having a recession. How bad it is gonna be, I have no idea. The basic calculations that I have done is that I think the powers to be want about 2 to 2.5% of the workforce out of the job market. They want about 2 to 2.5% people to lose their jobs, which is going to bring the aggregate spending down by about 10 to 11%, and that's what they want in order to create that equilibrium of aggregate demand and aggregate supply curves. And what do they need to do to achieve it? They are already doing it. The credit is tightening, the rates are going up, the it's getting hard to get a mortgage. A lot of small businesses are struggling. A lot of construction companies, the small construction tradesmen, they are struggling because the labor cost is going up. Their prices, the price power that they have is hasn't gone up much. They don't have any pricing power, to be really honest with you. And the retailers are finding it hard because when their leases are renewing, their rent costs are going up by like 50, 60, 70%. Their labor cost has gone up by like 50, 60% in the past 3 years, but prices of the goods that they're selling hasn't gone up by that much. So there is a squeeze on the margins of the businesses. And it always said in finance that it takes about 2.5 to 3 years for people who are involved in those trades to realize what's actually happening to their business, to get the picture clear. And I think that realization is slowly and steadily coming to people who are involved in businesses, like who are running construction companies, who are builders, running small restaurants or pubs or retail outlets. I think they are getting that sense that there is something that is happening which is not letting them make as much money from the same business that they were making 3 years back or 5 years back. And that realization, once it starts playing out, it's going to result into a cascading effect, and people going to start making harsh decisions. So let's say if somebody was employing 5 people, he's going to send the fifth person home and going to operate his business with 4 people, because he needs to bring down his cost in order to reach back to the same margin level that he was making, or try to reach to close to the level of the margin that he was making out of the business 3 years or 2 years back. And that's going to result in that loss of jobs that the policymakers and the powers to be wants to see. And when it starts to play out, it's a matter of time, and it's debatable as well, because my calculation says that it should be at the end of this year, November, December, somewhere around there. But I've been wrong in the past on many things, so I can't put any certainty to it. And the third question, I think over the next 5 to 10 years, I think labor is gonna dictate the terms rather than corporates. Uh, I think it's gonna come in cycles of 2 years or 3 year cycles, but over a long period of time from point A to B, I think it's gonna be much wiser decision to be a part of the labor force rather than be a part of that, rather than run your own business. Because until and unless you have a really good business idea and you're really good in managing your cost and everything, and there's less competition, obviously it's not that all the businesses are going to get affected negatively. It depends upon business, from case to case, and the ability of the managers to run their business. But overall, in totality, in aggregate, if you compare to the past 10 years, when it was said ki, if you want to make money, you should be in business. You can't make money by being an employee, be an employer. I think that's going to get reversed. And I'm not very positive on the housing market of Canada. I think we're going to be I think we already have entered into a bear market since last year. Even though there has been a pickup in the past 6 months for a variety of reasons. We have brought in almost like 500,000 people in the past 9 months in the country, and that is showing its effect in the rental prices and the housing prices picking up in Toronto, Montreal, and in Vancouver, and even in Calgary as well. Um, but I think if the cycle that the policymakers want to initiate of people losing their jobs because of the reasons that I explained earlier, that they want to create situation which will force the corporates to take the decision of shutting down their workforce, then I think it just doesn't matter how good the rental market is or whatever. You're not going to be able to pay your rent. You're not going to be able to pay your mortgage, or you're not going to be able to qualify for the mortgage because you just lost your job. And I think that's what they want to see, because by using that, they will control the prices of the assets that they want to bring in equilibrium with the wages. Because otherwise, there's going to be huge social issues. It just cannot go on. Uh, you are seeing what's happening in France. Just over the death of one person, the whole city was burned down in the past 2 weeks. And protests have been happening in France and in Paris for the past 6 months over the pension issues. See, check it on Google, uh, what's happening there. It's getting really, really tough. And see what's happening in Sweden as well. If you can spare some time from Instagram, Facebook, just Google about these things as well. They'll help you out in understanding how the world works. And hopefully, this discussion, a brief keynote kind of a discussion, would help you in understanding how our country is functioning and where it's going, how the economy is shaping out. And I wish you all well. Thank you.